Welcome. I'd really appreciate if you could drop a comment with your thoughts and reactions as you listen. Your feedback helps me craft better stories for you. The screen flickered blue in the darkened room as lines of code scrolled endlessly. My fingers moved deftly across the keyboard, pausing briefly to check a forum or reference an obscure website in another window. I'd been at this for hours with no breaks, fueled only by caffeine and mounting suspicion. Something wasn't adding up in the patterns I observed across different sites in the dark web underworld. Money, weapons, secrets. All the usual transactions proceeded apace, but a nagging sense told me a deeper game was afoot. Fragmentary clues hinted at a larger coordinated effort. Political machinations blended seamlessly with criminal rackets in a bewildering web. My peers dismissed such whispers as paranoia, content to inhabit their niches and look the other way from larger forces. But I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen puppeteers were pulling strings far beyond any one realm. If I could pierce the outer layers of cover and misdirection, what shadowy architecture might lie at the core? It was a risk to delve further. Powerful groups don't stay hidden by leaving loose threads for curious observers. Yet the potential rewards of unmasking such corruption spurred me on despite looming dangers. After hours sifting dead ends, a subtle change in server traffic patterns caught my eye, almost like a faint homing beacon guiding intruders in. Was it a trap or a breakthrough? Only one way to find out. I exploited known vulnerabilities with sleight of hand, circumventing firewalls and redirecting digital fingerprints until abruptly, a new encrypted network spawned onto my screen. Hidden code words and authentication protocols heralded an unseen underworld beyond the fringes. My breath quickened at first contact with this mysterious entity. Messages needed to be untangled carefully. Revealing too much too soon risked scaring mute informants or alerting hostile surveillance. After weeks earning scraps of fragmented intel from anxious insiders, one contact proposed a meeting. Ellis was purportedly a former operator who burned out after murky failures, now seeking redemption by passing secrets to those who ask the right questions. It was a tentative first step into unknown territory. Dark forces were supposedly at play with pliant tools in high places, but proving hidden hands moved the levers of power could make me the next target in their unforgiving games. I steeled myself before initiating the rendezvous, unsure what new challenges awaited down this rabbit hole. The club pulsed with thumping bass that shook your bones. Strobe lights flickered chaos across sweat, slicked patrons grinding mindlessly on the dance floor. I watched from a private booth, nursing a vodka tonic as arranged. Ellis sauntered in 30 minutes late, slid into the booth and signaled the waitress. His hair was longer, face more gaunt, but eyes still sharp as flint. "I see you still don't believe in punctuality," I said dryly over the din. "Old habits," Ellis shrugged, ordering a double whiskey. "You wanted to chase ghosts, kid. But be careful what history you exhume. Some pasts stay buried for good reason. I only seek the truth. If there are larger forces manipulating events, the public deserves to know. Wake up. This game has no winners, only those left standing at the final bell. What makes you think you can change the rules? By exposing lies. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, as they say." Ellis scoffed. "Idealism won't protect you from the wolves stalking your trail. I gave you what I could to satisfy your curiosity, but going further is folly. There may be a way to glean more without endangering assets. I've scanned purported members in online hunting grounds. With false identities, we could make contact and gain their trust. You want to waltz into the viper's den unarmed. Is that it? Don't be naive, kid. These people crush inquisitors for sport, which is why maintaining anonymity is paramount. As long as our real faces and names stay hidden, we hold the advantage." Ellis drained his whiskey glass pensively. He knew my determination would not be swayed, for better or worse. Finally, he said gruffly, "All right, you crazy fool. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes before you get us both killed." I began methodically infiltrating online communities, posing as disaffected youth seeking purpose. Through careful words placing Ellis as a mentor, we won invitations to networking forums and private messaging chains. Gradually, names were dropped. Shadowy plans and connections intimated between cryptic lines. It seemed underground assemblies coordinated much more than illicit trades, with hooks in legitimate spheres of influence worldwide. One contact, Julian, took a special interest in Ellis's fabricated history as a special forces burnout and connected us to a weapons enthusiast clan. Their forum discussed prospects for procurement and distribution with chilling nonchalance. Private chats revealed global dealing scale, with political favorites on 3 continents, funded by resources trafficking. My concerns grew as Ellis delighted in weaving ever more elaborate fictions, ensnaring ever deeper secrets. But pulling back now risked exposing our cover. We were in too deep to retreat. Our digital covers remained intact as weeks of engagement on shadowy forums bore fruit. Through back-channel references, Ellis and I gained invite to a supposedly secret meet coordinated by our weapons connections. The location buzzed with hushed urgency. A cavernous industrial warehouse lit by naked bulbs, divided into private conclaves blocked by storage crates. Masks were de rigueur for all entrants, transforming the mingling crowd into an ominous tableau. Ellis commented casually on a raid firepower and security precautions that outstripped criminal gangs. Then a voice cut through the din over loudspeaker, commanding attention to an open space where a hooded figure stood flanked by hard-eyed guards. Through a voice modulator, he welcomed the gathering as representatives of a spanning alliance, thanking all for service expanding their reach. I noted shifting alliances and mixed loyalties coded between introductions, memorizing faces and names. Our hosts were more than arms merchants. They formed a hub integrating diverse rackets under a single banner, but to what higher purpose? After the address, Ellis and I networked casually seeking clues. A severe woman known as Athena cornered me, hinting at opportunities on the contingency front if I proved my steel. Her cold inquisition unnerved, but then Ellis swooped in, drawing her off with a charming display of false bravado. I gathered he masked deeper fears, knowing we skirted an abyss where one misstep meant torture, if we were lucky. Just as we prepared excuses to slip away, screams rent the crowded warehouse. All eyes turned to a circle, forming rapidly near steel doors swinging open. A writhing figure was dragged within, bloodied baseball bat raised for another blow by masked assailants. Their victim was Julian, battered past recognition, but his rasping cries still carried final pleas for mercy unanswered. Panicked whispers erupted as the assembly scattered in disarray. Ellis hoarsely stated, "Our friend had asked too many inconvenient questions recently." A clear warning. We fled unnoticed in the confusion, but not before I glimpsed 3 hooded figures near the scene lock eyes with mine through mirror shades and smile grimly beneath. The gruesome scene replayed endlessly in my nightmares. Julian's brutalized corpse had been left outside as refuse, identity erased. We could trust no one. Our covers were surely blown and death may lurk around any corner. Ellis swore it was time to vanish off grid, abandoning our city haunts for an isolated safe house still in his grasp. I followed silently as he drove circuitous back roads under shroud of night, pulling us deeper into a barren wasteland where no prying eyes could find witnesses. Ellis' solitary retreat was a ramshackle hunting cabin, miles from any town, stocked with provisions sealed for emergencies like these. Shelter it offered, yet no solace came, only numbing anxiety and fits of rage that threatened to consume me. Over time, paranoia festered into outright madness within those claustrophobic walls. Ellis disappeared for long stretches, returning with gaunt mien and haunted eyes. Our one working phone delivered only cryptic warnings from contacts gone silent, cut off from the outside world with enemies closing in. Distrust grew between us like a cancer. Bitter arguments erupted over past failures and whose ideals had led us to this abyss. In my darkest moments, twisting the knife seemed a small act of vengeance against unseen oppressors stealing all hope. Only then did Ellis disclose his heavy secret. Names of innocents who had died on his watch, haunting debts that could never be repaid. His broken confession pierced the illusion of control I so desperately clung to, laying bare our shared humanity beneath masks of ego and impotence against greater forces. Two broken souls now, we clung to fraying instinct, scouring fragmentary clues for any advantage to reclaim our lives. A glimmer arrived unexpectedly. Ellis received a message from an old colleague driven underground years ago after exposed corruption. They claimed to have proof connecting our conspirators to an interwoven cabal manipulating events across borders. But the rendezvous coordinates led us straight into the lion's den. With no place left to run and the walls closing in, we resolved to face this final gamble head-on, for better or worse. Perhaps by unmasking the true puppeteers pulling the invisible strings, we could gain at least one victory against the darkness before its closing jaws swallowed us whole. Or so I told myself as our stolen vehicle sped into the gathering storm, toward a climactic confrontation that could fulfill our purpose at last, or seal our fates forever. The decrepit warehouse appeared deserted as we pulled up under cover of night. Ellis and I swept the interior cautiously, senses alert for any ambush. A cloaked figure emerged from shadow unexpectedly, greeting us gruffly as the contact from past whispers. Removing his hood revealed a past colleague of Ellis's, John, worn by rigors of a fugitive life. He claimed infiltrating the spider's web like us, finally tracing puppet masters to this location through subsidiaries and political associates. But evidence was useless without witnesses, and he alone wouldn't last against their forces. John believed together we stood a chance to turn the tables, using their arrogance against them. Hidden cameras recorded incriminating deals for years with politicians, fixers, and criminal networks intertwined. All that remained was to lure the leadership into a trap during a high-level handoff, then expose them in a global media firestorm, leaving no wriggle room. Dubious, I pressed for assurance. None were laid already. John swore lives meant nothing to him now, beyond vengeance against invisible hands that destroyed all he fought to uphold. Seeing truth in his hollow eyes, I agreed. We'd come too far to stop short of facing our demons at last, whatever the costs. That night, under John's direction, we sent coded messages luring key figures to collect damaging footage, with promises of greater power and no witnesses. Just as encrypted convoys swept inside, we sprung hidden cameras live streaming worldwide on hidden online channels. Figures emerged without masks at last, revealing faces I knew too well, and connections no one ever imagined. Gasps of shock and rage rang globally as puppet strings were torn open for all to see, along with undeniable evidence toppling regimes. Our unlikely alliance had achieved more than expected, obliterating the invisible web in a single blow. Yet darker entities already moved to fill the void, and wounds from our ordeals could not be so easily healed. At dusk, the three fugitives parted ways with bittersweet solace, renewed purpose to stay vigil against the eternal shadows. The blinking cursor taunted Jenna, daring her to venture deeper into the abyss. Everything she knew told her to close the screen and walk away, yet her insatiable curiosity pushed her onward. With a resigned sigh, she typed the domain into Tor and held her breath. The dark web blinked into existence, a murky underworld lurking just beneath the surface of the regular internet. Jenna scrolled cautiously through dead, drop markets, encrypted forums, and illicit bazaars. Most traffic centered on drugs, weapons, or human trafficking. Ugly, yet mundane crimes. But underneath it all ran rumors of something far more sinister. A shadowy entity known only as the Red Room. If it existed, the Red Room lived up to its name. Said to broadcast acts of torture and murder in real time, it was the stuff of urban legend. Too horrific to be real, yet ever present on the fringes of investigation. Jenna's research into true crime pointed to several unsolved cases that matched its reported methods. Still, without hard evidence, she remained doubtful. Deeper she dove, ignoring warning signs to turn back. Her diligence paid off when a cryptic whisper netted coordinates to hidden site. There, streamed behind 7 proxy shields, she found it. The fabled Red Room live feed. Eyes wide, Jenna hit play and regretted it instantly. Before her unfolded a scene ripped straight from a nightmare. Muted screams and the wet sounds of violence echoed in Jenna's mind long after exiting the tab. Sleep became a stranger as questions swirled. If true, who was behind such depravity, and how had they evaded capture for so long? Jenna knew she shouldn't care, but her thirst for truth was not so easily quenched. Days passed in a haze of research. Jenna tracked rumored sightings, scoured unsolved case files, and infiltrated suspect communities. Each new clue chipped away at her doubts until only a hard reality remained. The Red Room was indeed real, but finding its operators amid the darkness seemed an impossible task, like grasping at shadows. It was then a new whisper appeared with coordinates for an abandoned farm upstate. Locals spoke of mysteries surrounding the decaying property. Jenna's intuition stirred. Had the Red Room's presence drifted from the deep web into the physical world? Only one way to find out. Sliding into her car under cover of night, Jenna drove towards what she hoped were finally some answers. The abandoned farm loomed ahead, windows like hollow eyes glaring through the misty gloom. Jenna cut her high beams and coasted the last quarter mile on memory of her hastily drawn map. Gravel crunched under tires as she parked a discreet distance away. Silence reigned in this isolated place. Not even wildlife stirred in the surrounding woods. Gathering her gear, Jenna slipped from the car. Cool night air raised goosebumps under her jacket as she surveyed the decaying homestead. 2 centuries of weathering had ravaged what was once a simple 2-story farmhouse. Buckling wood warped under piles of dead leaves and brambles reclaimed once tended fields. Silo and barn leaned at odd angles, nature steadily erasing all evidence of past life here. Jenna's flashlight cut swaths through the darkness, illuminating crumbling structures, but revealing no movement within. Something creaked in the wind, setting her nerves on edge. She picked her way carefully towards the house, stepping over broken furniture and garbage littering the overgrown yard. Pausing at the porch, her light fell upon a conspicuous scrap of cloth snagged in the railing. Upon closer examination, Jenna recoiled in horror. Clutched in splintered wood was a child's t-shirt stained brown. Dread coiled in her stomach, but she steeled her resolve, ascending damp steps towards the door with care. As expected, it stood ajar. No lock could deter those wishing to plumb the farm's secrets after dark. Steeling herself, Jenna crossed the threshold into a living nightmare. The heavy scent of decay and something feral assaulted her senses within. Her flashlight beam danced around piles of debris, picking out scuttling shapes that scurried away from the light. Something crunched underfoot, and she shone down to find mildewed photos and children's toys strewn amid rodent droppings and cobwebs. A cold sweat broke out across Jenna's skin as her intrusion disturbed this sleeping place of memories. She picked her way deeper, flashlight picking out details that made her want to flee. Dark stains on walls, chains bolted to structural beams, and eerie children's drawing tacked with rusty nails. This house hid terrors behind cracked plaster and peeling wallpaper. Gripped by mounting unease, Jenna swung her light upward, and what she saw made her retch involuntarily. Hanging from rafters like butchered meat were remains, desiccated and crawling with insects. In the dancing shadows, she thought she glimpsed a small, socketed skull staring down with accusation. Jenna stumbled back out into the night, gasping for clean air. Leaning over with hands on knees, she fought to control her heaving stomach. This place held more than just decaying memories. Evil had festered here, and she feared its stain had sunk deeper than just these few acres of abandoned farm. From the tree-line watching eyes, tracked her reaction, faces hidden behind burlap sacks relishing her terror. A week passed before Jenna gathered the courage to return to the isolated farm. Nightmares haunted her sleep as gnawing questions lingered. She needed to understand how such depravity remained hidden for so long within a tight-knit community. Parking far down a dirt road, Jenna approached under the noon sun. No shadows here to conceal creeping unease. All appeared unchanged from her disturbing midnight discovery. However, a twitch in the undergrowth drew her attention. Rising slowly with hands raised, an elderly woman emerged onto the overgrown lawn. Fear and confusion battled on her careworn face at Jenna's unexpected appearance. "Please. I mean, no harm, ma'am. I just want to understand what happened here." The old woman considered intense silence before nodding reluctantly. "Name's Mabel. Been around these parts my whole life. Ain't right what went on in this place. But folks don't like dredging up the past." She led Jenna away towards a ramshackle home further down the road. Over sweet tea, on a rickety porch, Mabel began to open up about dark secrets buried with the previous owners of the farm. That no good Elias Turner, him and his kin kept to themselves most ways. Always strange goings-on up at their property, but folks turned a blind eye. Her tone grew bitter, eyes haunted by unspoken terrors. Then one day, little Joey Whitman from down the lane never returned from playing. We searched for weeks, but that monster had hid his body too well. Jenna felt cold, despite the afternoon sun, processing the grim implications. The authorities were never able to prove Elias's involvement, though. Mabel shook her head sadly. He had this whole town under his thumb through fear. Any who spoke against him met with accidents soon as. It was only years later, after he passed. Those were found hanging in that house. Heavy silence fell as painful memories lingered in Mabel's wizened eyes. She slid a wrinkled photo across the weathered boards, a class picture from the 40s containing a young Elias beaming maliciously. Something about his gaze chilled Jenna more than any horror lurking in that dilapidated farm. This man's depravity was colder than any demon that could be conjured. The following nights, Jenna tossed fitfully, piecing together Mabel's fragmented account. She became obsessed with restoring lost names and faces to that grisly scene. Research led her to a neighbor even older than Mabel, who provided missing context about the long-dead Turner family. But when Jenna returned to thank the elderly man, his home stood vacant and decaying, as if he'd never lived there at all. It seemed the past did not wish to give up its ghost so easily. In the wake of her elderly contact's disappearance, panic gripped Jenna. She redoubled efforts, searching land records and archives for clues to the Turner family's influence over the decades. What began as casual rural interest mutated into an unraveling of sinister threads reaching back generations. As pieces fell into place, so too did hostile eyes tracking her movements. Where once indifferent, locals now met her queries with sneers or slammed doors. An air of unseen menace lurked in every shadow, paranoia feeding her creeping sense of isolation. Only Mabel remained willing to aid her investigations, providing names that stirred Jenna's growing horror. Edgar, Malcolm, Silas. Generation after generation of Turner depravity stretching back to the town's founding, each leaving their own stain. Only one thing united this inbred clan: a taste for brutalizing the innocent. Their methods evolved over a century from opportunistic attacks to coordinated schemes, keeping an entire community complicit through terror. Jenna dared not imagine the countless victims erased without a trace into these poisoned fields. In a secured safe house, Jenna pored over clues by weak lamplight. Foreboding thickened around her soul with each new connection made. Details of the farmhouse scene pointed to bizarre ritualistic undertones in the Turners' proclivities. Twisted paganism blended with small-town corruption, forming a witch's brew of rural American Gothic horror. Had their obsession metastasized beyond this backwater into something far more organized and predatory? Jenna rubbed tired eyes, craving escape from this relentless nightmare. A creak at the window jolted her spine straight. Someone was out there watching unseen. She slowly peeked through curtain gaps at a featureless silhouette standing motionless, just beyond the weak glow. Locked in a silent standoff, Jenna dared not blink, lest it vanish back into the enveloping night. Only when dawn light flooded the yard did the figure dissolve into the yawning shadows of surrounding pines. Resupply trips grew shorter. Paranoid glances frequent as each risky venture chipped away Jenna's fraying nerves. Contact with Mabel was her sole reprieve, offering aged wisdom in their shared quest for answers. But one gray morning, her country mailbox stood bare once more. Dread congealed heavy in Jenna's stomach as a terrible premonition gripped her heart. Rushing to Mabel's home yielded only emptiness amid signs of struggle. She was gone, vanished without a trace into the eerie quiet shrouding this forsaken place. All that remained of her steadfast courage were tire tracks scarring wet earth into the endless woods. Jenna was truly alone, facing terrors lurking in places no light could penetrate. The storm arrived as night fell, bringing howling winds and blinding sheets of rain. Perfect cover for Jenna's final play. Intuition led her underground to ruins engulfed by the Turner family farm. Hidden chambers, long thought collapsed, held their darkest secrets awaiting discovery. Her flashlight cut through inky darkness, rounding tight stone corners, slick with moss. Dampness seeped into Jenna's bones as unseen depths swallowed stray echoes. A lingering musk hinted at rituals left undisturbed for ages. Her beam froze upon a defaced runic symbol etched above an iron-banded door. With a grunt, she shouldered rusting bolts aside, flashlight spilling into a macabre throne room of evil. Fetid air rushed from fissures hissing like slain ghosts. Massive gnarled roots penetrated rough-hewn walls, as if the woods themselves invaded this unholy place. Jenna's light rove detailing scenes depicting unspeakable perversions, immortalized within the stone. Her gorge rose recognizing antique trophies, mounted glistening amid cobwebbed rafters. This was a lair not meant for human eyes. She had found the epicenter of all nightmares. A noise snapped Jenna's focus to the cavernous basement. Stealing her resolve, she crept towards its gaping maw. Rain drumming the farm surface above, her light strobing into depths revealed hulking shapes shifting. A muted moan rose, echoing from the depths where madness stirred in restless slumber. With a strained breath, she cast her light further and screamed. There, bound and gagged, lay Mabel, barely conscious amongst others in varying states of torment. Rustling footsteps signaled their discoverer had arrived. Jenna swung frantically, seeking the source, finding only a slender silhouette emerging from living darkness. Cool, calculating eyes appraised her through sheets of pouring rain. The last face Mabel and all the others saw. You've come so far, yet still don't understand our way of life. The old ways must be upheld. The figure's distorted voice echoed as lightning briefly illuminated high cheekbones and gaunt frame. Jenna realized with dread this was no man, only a vessel for a legacy of unspeakable depravity, passed through blood for generations untold. In a blur, her flashlight shattered under a powerful blow. Jenna swung blindly as shadows converged. the monster's acolytes coming to pay tribute. Her knuckles collided flesh, but there were too many. Rending talons seized her flailing form, dragging towards a fate worse than any nightmare. Through the storm's wrath rose a bestial howl announcing the clan's feast was about to commence. Jenna's final thoughts were for the innocent silenced under this blighted earth. Morning light bleached the farm to ashen-gray silence. Stained furrows sat undisturbed since primordial times, as rains washed all signs of the terrible Sabbath performed through the night. Clutched in Jenna's stiffened hand remained her only hope, a final shred of evidence taunting recovery. Though escape was denied, her mission would live on when rescuers found this last remnant leading inevitably towards reckoning for the demons stalking the deepest dark. It was just another boring Thursday night. I scrolled aimlessly through Reddit, hoping to find something to spark even a shred of interest. When nothing caught my eye, I decided to take a walk on the wild side, exploring the dark corners of the internet I usually avoided. I'd heard rumors about lurking in the deep web. Maybe there I could uncover something stranger than fiction. A few clicks in, I reached an unindexed site resembling endless linked pages in an abandoned library. The URLs were nonsensical strings of letters and numbers. My instincts said to turn back, but curiosity got the better of me as usual. I clicked deeper. Most pages were garbled messes or long dead ends. Discouragement set in until a thumbnail caught my peripheral vision, a flashing play button amid a tangle of code. I hesitated, then clicked, half expecting a virus alert. Instead, a grainy video loaded labeled only live. At first, it seemed to show an empty warehouse. Then, movement in the corner of the frame revealed disoriented figures coming to, shielding eyes from painful fluorescent lights. 7 people in total stumbled in their confusion, until a burst of static erupted from overhead speakers. They froze in alert fear as a voice distorted beyond recognition echoed throughout the cavernous room. Welcome to the game. You have been selected to participate in a little entertainment for our viewers. Around you lie weapons of varying lethality. You have 1 hour to battle to the last standing, or you all forfeit your lives. May the odds be ever in your favor. A loud buzzer cut off the announcement. Chaos erupted as understanding hit. Panicked shrieks mixed with defiant shouts as they scrambled for the crude blades and clubs strewn about. 2 collided immediately in a flurry of untrained blows. My heart raced. Was this real? Some twisted prank? I couldn't look away, even as the first struck a lucky shot and sent the second crumpling soundlessly to the stained concrete. Revulsion and fascination wrestled within me. Who were these people? What depraved corner of humanity sponsored such barbarism? As more joined the fray, survival instincts took over. Blood darkened the floor, and by some moral failing, I watched with detachment, cataloging minor details to convince myself it wasn't real. 3 remained after 15 gruesome minutes. A wiry teenager wielding a pipe, an injured yet furious woman clutching a rusted blade, and a hulking man who had knocked out his first victim with a single hammer strike. They circled warily, waiting for an opening. I held my breath, willing one of the underdogs to win this horrific lottery. The woman lunged first with a primal scream, and the game was down to 2. When the teen landed a blow to his larger opponent's knee, dropping him with a howl, I gasped with a thrill as unsettling as the video itself. Triumph and terror warred on the boy's gaunt face. He raised his weapon for the final strike, then froze at a crackle from above. Congratulations, you are the winner of this match. However, the game is not yet over. The transmission abruptly cut out, leaving me drained and reeling in the glow of my laptop screen. I had witnessed true horror and felt, ascendant in a way, behind this veil of anonymity. Revulsed by my reaction, I slammed the laptop closed, as if that could undo the darkness I had let seep through the fiber optic cable into my ordinary world. But it was too late to unsee what had already taken root in the pit of my restless mind. The empty apartment felt more isolating than usual that night. Sleep evaded me as images from the stream flickered behind closed eyes. I gave up around 3 and booted up my laptop again, dragging fingernails down my face. My thumb hovered over the browser back button, hesitating to re-enter that dark domain. Curiosity outweighed reason, yet again. I had to know what became of the teenage Victor. With a few clicks, the ominous video player reloaded right where I left off. The warehouse looked even more dreary in the early hours, illuminated now by a single hanging bulb, swinging gently above a lone figure, catching his breath in the center. My attention shifted to the distorted voice, resonating with false sincerity. A well-earned victory, but rest assured the game is far from over. Your next opponents have been picked for your particular skills. I'm sure they look forward to the challenge. You may take your time to recuperate. Their arrival is imminent. The teen glared fearfully around, clutching his pipe with shaking hands. Without warning, twin doors burst open at the far end, spilling in 2 hulking brutes armed with cricket bats. A chilling yell echoed as they charged with jaws clenched and murder in their eyes. A brief scuffle ensued before the larger assailant struck a crippling blow to the boy's leg. He crumpled with an agonized howl, curling instinctively to shield his vulnerable form. His partner wasted no time laying into exposed flesh with a savage frenzy. Bones cracked loud and clear through tinny speakers. My stomach churned, yet still I couldn't tear my eyes from the savagery unfolding in grainy focus. Blood darkened the concrete anew as the teen's wails diminished to whimpers. Then silence amid a haze of pulverized meat. The feed lingered on his twisted remains long after the pair sauntered off victoriously, presumably to collect winnings from their shadowy masterminds. A strangled sob escaped my throat, horrifyingly loud in the desolate flat. I grasped helplessly at my laptop, scrambling to erase what could not be unseen, as if tearing out optic nerves would undo the trauma seared there forever. My breath came short and painful, mind reeling from implications of what I had let in like a parasite under my skin. Those were real people suffering real torment, and I contributed to it with every second I indulged the sick compulsion to consume their humanity. No, worse than that, I delighted in it, cheered for more depravity with every savage twist. I sagged defeated against the wall, overcome by waves of nausea and self-loathing. Hours passed before rational thought re-emerged through the haze of panic and guilt. A chilling realization struck that my curiosity may have been the very thing that sealed the teen's dreadful fate. Did they pick up on viewers to target in further matches? I shuddered to imagine what new terrors the next transmission could unveil. There had to be a way to shut it down before any more innocent lives paid for bloodsport entertainments. I steeled myself to hunt for answers, though part of me dredged only deeper involvement in that dark and deadly domain. I searched tirelessly over the next few days for any clues to end the depraved streaming ring. With each dead-end link, my obsession grew, as did paranoia that unseen puppeteers targeted impressionable viewers like prey. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by fitful dozes plagued by vivid nightmares of bloody warehouses. By the 3rd night, restless fingers drew me back to their domain of their own accord. The live feed had just begun as I arrived, showing 2 new disoriented players awakening in the familiar grim setting. I peered closely, probing for hints to unravel this sinister puzzle. One was an older man with salt and pepper hair, eyes dark with weariness beyond his years. The other appeared even younger than the boy from before. No more than 15, face-betraying childish terror beneath bravado. As rules echoed from overhead, I wondered in vain what circumstance or misfortune brought these souls to this place. Chaotic violence ensued as usual. Yet try as I might to detach, my heart ached for their plight. The teen lasted longer than expected. But attrition overcame even his scrappy efforts eventually. Blood pooled thick around his still form, bringing unwanted flashes of the first victim to mind. I lingered long after most anonymous viewers, surely moved on, fixated on each minuscule detail as if answers lay encoded between pixels. Unsettled, I began combing archive streams from the beginning, searching for repetitive motifs or recognizable backdrops that offered any insight to their true operations. Days blended into a haze of screens and stale caffeine. I lost precious hours, piecing together distorted clues, though more questions arose with each new finding. Places resembled but were not identical. Purposeful misdirects to thwart would be rescuers, or merely different venues to maximize suffering. Phantom. Sounds disturbed vacuous nights. Hints of madness seeping in alongside images better consigned to nightmares. There, in the twisting halls of my subconscious, the games continued unabated before staring. Nameless spectators. Weapons rose and fell without mercy or remorse, flowing ever onward in a surreal choreography of bloodsport. By the seventh stream, exhaustion and sanity warred within for dominance. Yet stillness meant facing my culpability in passively fueling that depraved enterprise. And so the hunt continued, an endless feedback loop sealing my fate as inextricably as theirs within that inescapable cycle. Somewhere in those twisting digital labyrinths lay answers. If only my weakening mind and body could unravel the intricate knots before the games took their own terrible toll. The lines blurred further each transmission. I lost track of sleep and wake. That hellish domain became my only constant companion. Fragmented dreams merged seamlessly into the waking nightmare unfolding endlessly on screen. My days drifted by in a haze of research and recollection, trying vainly to crack this maddening cryptography through sheer force of desperation. Any leads dead, ended more complex riddles pointing nowhere, and Ouroboros consuming itself eternally. Yet new clues emerged tonight that stopped my heart. The latest victims awoke in a decaying complex, strikingly similar to blueprints from an abandoned factory near my neighborhood. Impossible odds, surely, but doubt festered like poison in my frayed psyche. As usual, I lingered after most viewers moved on to next to meaningless distractions, rewatching subtle details on loop. Then it happened. A fleeting glimpse through grimy windows revealing a warped reflection of the night sky, unmistakably matching my city's light pollution signature. A strangled gasp tore from my lungs at the chilling implication. Was it truly coincidence placing innocence in my very backyard, or had my rabid fixation painted a target where none existed before? I scrabbled desperately for rationality amid panic's rising tide. Though more feasible, leads still arose elsewhere. Paranoia burrowed its roots deep henceforth. Phantom presences haunted empty streets and crowded rooms alike under my new distorting lens. Nameless eyes peered back from every reflective surface, judging, assessing, waiting. The world closed in, reality warping into a funhouse mirror reflection of that sinister broadcast, bleeding into day-to-day banality. I started at innocuous sounds, scanning crowds for familiar faces that could be so easily plucked away next without warning or reason. Sleep refused to provide solace either, with insomnia morphing my sanctuary into a theater for experimental night. Terrors. I took long, winding routes home to shake hypothetical pursuers, rarely leaving sight of people for fear of the monsters lurking in my periphery. So I retreated further into the one certainty remaining, combing the archives for purpose that eluded my grasp like water. Yet no answers arose, only deeper questions forming a noose, slowly closing around my frayed consciousness. How long until that spectral game encompassed my world entirely? sealing my inevitable participation as penance for bearing witness to others' suffering. The end grew nearer with each nightmarish transmission. I had reached the brink. The lines between reality and the ghastly broadcasts fully dissolved under constant trauma. Sleep refused to provide respite from horrors invading waking life at every turn. As my world collapsed into an endless loop of fear and futility, salvation arrived in the darkest of forms. The latest stream revealed faces hauntingly familiar. Neighbors whose chance greetings once provided fleeting normalcy, now staring back wide-eyed and panicked. Seeing their terrified pleading sent a bolt of clarity lancing through the fog. These were no longer random souls suffering twisted games. They were people I knew subjected to unspeakable torments because of me. Guilt and rage tore through my shredded psyche with renewed vigor. I scrambled from my sickbed, fueled by manic determination to put an end to this madness before more innocence paid the price. With trembling hands, I typed furious queries, combing past clues for long-buried leads. At last, one encrypted file contained coordinates too detailed to be fabrication. Darkness had fallen by the time I arrived, breaths coming in, gasping clouds against the bitter chill. Broken windows leered from what remained of worn brick walls, a haunting reflection of my crumbling mental state. Dread seized my heart at muffled cries resonating from shadowy depths within. I steeled, shaking limbs, and crept through jagged openings into the belly of that hellish hive. Dusty halls twisted endlessly, each turn threatening to seal me within these walls forever. Participant at last in the games that haunted my every thought. More than once, I startled awake from fitful microsleeps, unsure if reality remained. At the nadir of hope, a grating noise guided my faltering steps. Harsh light spilled from a crack in heavy doors, banishing nightmares, if only for a moment. I peered through to witness my neighbors huddled terrified in a filthy cell, facing down leering challengers armed with rusty implements. Rage consumed rationality in a searing blaze. With an animalistic yell, I shouldered the decrepit barrier with renewed vigor until rusty hinges gave way with a thunderous crash. Mayhem erupted as challengers scrambled in shocked disarray. I grabbed the first makeshift weapon at hand, a jagged pipe, and waded into the fray with abandon, striking down all in my path. When crimson, flecked clarity returned, only myself and traumatized captives remained among the aftermath. Sirens wailed in the distance. Homing in on some anonymous tip, I sank to the floor, gazing upon a sea of faces, some familiar, most total strangers, and found solace in saving lives, however many it took to purge these demons at last. The games were over. We had reclaimed our fractured humanity.